The streets of New Atlantis, capital of the Terran Confederation, were alive with the sound of jubilant celebrations. Crowds of people spilled out from towering skyscrapers and swarmed the broad avenues, waving banners and flags emblazoned with the Confederation's emblem. Laughter, cheers, and the popping of champagne corks filled the air as humanity toasted its momentous victory over the hated alien empire that had oppressed them for decades. At the center of the revelry stood Rear Admiral Samantha Alvarez, her dress uniform crisp and her medals gleaming in the afternoon sun. She had led the decisive naval battle that had broken the alien blockade and paved the way for the final push to liberate the last occupied human worlds. The crowd surged around her, hoisting the hero of the hour onto their shoulders as they chanted her name. Samantha forced a smile, her triumph tempered by a growing unease. As the cheers of the throngs echoed through the city streets, unsettling whispers had begun to circulate. Rumors of horrific war crimes committed by the retreating alien forces, stories of mass executions, and the systematic destruction of human culture. At first, she had dismissed them as exaggerations, the understandable product of the fear and suffering endured under alien occupation. But then the video footage started to surface, shaky, grainy recordings smuggled out from the liberated colonies. Samantha watched in mounting horror as the evidence mounted, revealing a pattern of atrocities that belied the celebratory mood surrounding her. Columns of human prisoners marched to their deaths, families gunned down in the streets, cultural artifacts reduced to smoldering ruins. The alien forces, in their final days, had lashed out with a vengeance, determined to erase every vestige of human civilization from the conquered worlds. As the visceral images circulated through the Confederation's networks, the mood of the crowds shifted palpably. The victorious cheers grew strained, giving way to murmurs of outrage and cries for justice. Samantha found herself lowered back to the ground, the people around her no longer celebrating, but demanding answers. The Admiral's mind raced as she considered the implications. This was no longer a simple matter of military victory. It had become a moral imperative. The aliens had not merely been defeated. They had committed unspeakable war crimes that could not go unpunished. The people would not be satisfied with a return to the status quo, not when such horrors had been unleashed upon them. Samantha knew that the Confederation leadership would have to act, and act decisively. Anything less would betray the sacred trust placed in them by the citizens they had sworn to protect. The time for victory cheers had passed. Now was the time for justice. Bracing herself, the Admiral stepped forward, raising her hands to quiet the restless crowd. "My fellow citizens of the Terran Confederation," she began, her voice carrying a renewed sense of purpose. "We have achieved a great triumph, but our work is not yet done. The alien empire has committed heinous atrocities against our people, crimes that cannot be forgotten or forgiven." The crowd erupted in a chorus of angry shouts, the once celebratory mood transformed into a righteous fury. Samantha allowed the outrage to build for a moment before raising her hands again. "We will not rest until those responsible have been brought to justice," she declared, her words cutting through the din. "This I promise you, on my honor as a soldier of the Confederation. The time has come for us to seek the justice our people deserve." Her pronouncement was met with a deafening roar of approval, the people's thirst for retribution echoing through the streets of New Atlantis. Samantha's heart hardened with resolve, knowing that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but she was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. For the sake of those who had suffered under alien rule, and for the sake of the Confederation's very soul, justice would be served. In the wake of Rear Admiral Samantha Alvarez's stirring call for justice, the Terran Confederation wasted no time in assembling a special investigative commission. Tasked with uncovering the full extent of the alien empire's war crimes, the commission was comprised of seasoned military officers, legal experts, and respected civilian leaders, all driven by a shared sense of moral outrage. Leading the commission was General Maximilian Hartmann, a grizzled veteran of the Confederation's long struggle against alien oppression. His weathered face bore the scars of countless battles, But it was the fire in his eyes that struck fear into the hearts of those he interrogated. Hartman was a man on a mission, determined to leave no stone unturned in his pursuit of the truth. The Commission's first order of business was to travel to the recently liberated colonies, interviewing survivors and gathering evidence from the scenes of the alleged atrocities. What they encountered shook even the most hardened among them to the core. In the once bustling city of New Samarkand, the team found the charred remains of a cultural center, its priceless artifacts and irreplaceable historical records reduced to ash. Eyewitnesses described how the retreating alien forces had methodically looted and then burned the building, eliminating any trace of human heritage. Further investigations uncovered even more disturbing revelations. In the rural farming community of Greendale, the Commission discovered mass graves containing hundreds of bodies, men, women, and children who had been summarily executed by the alien occupiers. Testimony from the few survivors painted a harrowing picture of the final days of the alien rule, as the conquerors lashed out in a brutal campaign of retribution. They knew they were losing, so they wanted to punish us, recounted a young woman, her voice quivering with barely contained rage. They rounded up everyone they could find and shot them, just like that, without mercy. As the Commission members conducted their grim work, collecting evidence and recording statements, the scale of the atrocities became increasingly clear. Across the liberated worlds, a pattern of systematic destruction and mass killings emerged, shattering any lingering illusions of a humane enemy. The aliens, in their final moments, had sought to erase the very essence of human civilization from the conquered territories. Hartman and his team worked tirelessly, driven by a growing sense of moral outrage. This was no longer just about winning a war. It was about ensuring that those responsible for such heinous crimes were held accountable. The people of the Confederation deserved justice, and the Commission was determined to deliver it. When the investigation finally concluded, the Commission members convened in the capital city of New Atlantis to compile their findings. Hartman stood before the gathered Confederation Council, his weathered face etched with a profound sense of sorrow and determination. "What we have uncovered," he began, his voice carrying a weighty gravity, "is a pattern of atrocities that defies description. Mass executions, the systematic destruction of cultural heritage, the wholesale subjugation and oppression of the human population. These were not the actions of a defeated enemy, but of a vengeful, malicious force intent on erasing our very existence." The council chamber fell silent, the members visibly shaken by the general's words. Hartman paused, allowing the magnitude of the revelations to sink in before continuing. "We cannot, we must not, allow these crimes to go unpunished. The people of the Terran Confederation demand justice, and justice they shall have." His gaze swept across the room, his expression hardening with unyielding determination. "I call upon this council to formally declare the alien leadership guilty of war crimes against humanity, and to authorize the necessary steps to ensure that they are held accountable for their actions." The chamber erupted in a chorus of impassioned voices, the councilors debating the merits of Hartman's proposal. But the general stood firm, his resolve unshakable. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was prepared to see it through, no matter the cost. For the sake of the fallen, for the sake of the living, justice would be served. The Confederation Council chamber was a cauldron of heated debate as General Hartman presented the findings of the investigative commission. The gravity of the revealed atrocities hung heavy in the air, silencing even the most vocal of the councilors. Hartman stood resolute, his unwavering gaze sweeping across the room. "The time has come for us to act," he declared, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "These were not mere acts of war, but deliberate, systematic attempts to erase our very existence. The alien leadership must be held accountable for their crimes against humanity." The councilors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their expressions torn between outrage and uncertainty. Diplomacy had long been the preferred approach, but the scale of the newly uncovered atrocities threatened to shatter any hope of a peaceful resolution. Amidst the tense deliberations, a lone voice rose up. Councilor Eliza Nakamura, a respected elder statesman known for her pragmatic approach to foreign policy. "General Hartman, your findings are indeed deeply disturbing," she began, her tone measured and careful. "However, we must consider the potential consequences of openly condemning the alien leadership as war criminals. Such a declaration could jeopardize any chance of negotiating a lasting peace and plunge us into an all-out war that none of us can truly foresee the outcome of." Hartman's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing at the counselor's words. "With respect, counselor, we have already tried negotiation. The alien empire has refused to acknowledge their crimes, let alone offer any semblance of contrition or reparation. This is not a matter of political posturing. This is about ensuring that justice is served and that such atrocities never happen again." Nakamura raised a hand, silencing the general's retort. "I understand your outrage, General, and I share it. But we must also consider the broader strategic implications. A declaration of war crimes could galvanize the alien populace, uniting them against us in a last-ditch effort for survival. The cost in human lives could be catastrophic." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, counselors weighing the merits of Hartman's impassioned plea against Nakamura's cautious warnings. The tension in the room was palpable, the fate of the Confederation hanging in the balance. Amid the din, President Aisha Malik, the Confederation's resolute leader, rose from her seat, commanding the attention of the room with a single authoritative gesture. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the arguing. "General Hartman, your findings are undeniable, and the people of the Confederation demand justice. However, Counselor Nakamura also raises valid concerns about the potential consequences of our actions." Malik paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled counselors. "We must not act hastily, but nor can we shirk our moral obligation. The alien leadership has committed unforgivable atrocities, and they must be held accountable. But we must also consider the well-being of our own citizens and the long-term stability of the Confederation." The President took a deep breath, her resolve evident in the set of her shoulders. "I am ordering the immediate dispatch of a diplomatic envoy to the alien capital. They will present our formal declaration of war crimes and demand the extradition of the responsible parties. If the alien empire refuses to cooperate, then we will have no choice but to pursue more forceful means of ensuring justice." Hartman opened his mouth to protest, but a raised hand from Malik silenced him. "This is not a decision I make lightly, General, but the people deserve answers, and they deserve retribution. We will exhaust every avenue of diplomacy, but if that fails, then we will do what is necessary to hold the perpetrators accountable." The chamber fell silent, the weight of the President's words settling over the counselors like a heavy mantle. Malik's gaze swept the room, daring anyone to challenge her directive. For a moment, no one spoke, the gravity of the situation palpable. Then, slowly, the counselors began to nod, their expressions hardening with determination. The path forward was clear, and the Confederation would not shrink from the difficult decisions that lay ahead. The diplomatic envoy dispatched by the Terran Confederation returned from the alien capital with a grim report. The demands for the extradition of the alien leadership had been met with defiant refusal. The alien empire flatly denied any wrongdoing, dismissing the charges of war crimes as baseless propaganda, and vowing to defend their sovereign right to self-governance. President Aisha Malik's lips tightened into a thin line as she received the news, her eyes narrowing with a mixture of frustration and determination. It was clear that the path of diplomacy had reached a dead end, leaving the Confederation with no choice but to pursue more forceful measures. "Convene the Joint Chiefs," Malik ordered, her voice calm but unyielding. "It's time we showed the alien empire the true might of the Terran Confederation." Within hours, the Confederation's top military commanders were assembled in the President's war room, poring over intelligence reports and strategic projections. General Hartman, his face etched with a grim resolve, laid out a bold and ambitious plan. "We'll strike at the heart of the alien empire," he announced, his voice carrying a steely edge. Our most advanced warships and elite ground forces will launch a coordinated assault, targeting the alien leadership and their key industrial centers. We'll cripple their ability to wage war and force them to the negotiating table, or face complete annihilation. The other generals exchanged concerned glances, weighing the risks and potential consequences of such a bold offensive. But Hartman's unwavering determination, coupled with the public's clamor for justice, left little room for dissent. The people of the Confederation demand retribution, Malik declared, her gaze sweeping across the room. We cannot allow these war crimes to go unpunished. The alien leadership must be held accountable, no matter the cost. With the president's unequivocal endorsement, the military planners set to work, mapping out the complex, multi-pronged assault. Seasoned combat veterans, their eyes hardened by years of conflict, pored over tactical simulations and contingency plans, leaving no detail to chance. As the preparations intensified, the mood across the Confederation shifted from one of cautious uncertainty to resolute determination. The news of the impending offensive spread like wildfire, igniting a surge of patriotism and a thirst for vengeance among the populace. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers, young men and women eager to don the Confederation's uniform and fight for the cause of justice. Factories worked around the clock, churning out the advanced weaponry and cutting-edge technology that would equip the strike force. In the capital city of New Atlantis, crowds gathered in the streets, waving banners and chanting slogans in support of the military's mission. The once muted celebrations had been transformed into a fervent display of unity and resolve, the people's desire for retribution fueling their unwavering support for the Confederation's leaders. As the final preparations were put in place, General Hartman stood before his assembled troops, his weathered face etched with a mixture of solemn determination and righteous fury. We fight not just for the Terran Confederation, but for the very soul of humanity, he declared, his voice carrying across the sea of faces before him. The alien empire has committed unforgivable atrocities, and they will be made to answer for their crimes. We will strike with the fury of the righteous, and we will not rest until justice is served. The soldiers erupted in a deafening roar of approval, their battle cries echoing through the air as they readied themselves for the impending offensive. The time for diplomacy had passed. Now was the time for action, and the Confederation's forces were poised to deliver a decisive blow that would shake the very foundations of the alien empire. The skies over the alien capital burned with the fury of the Terran Confederation's assault. Streaks of energy lanced through the atmosphere as the Confederation's advanced warships engaged the enemy's defensive forces in a cataclysmic clash of firepower. At the forefront of the onslaught was the flagship of the Confederation fleet, its sleek hull bristling with state-of-the-art weaponry. Commanding the vessel was Rear Admiral Samantha Alvarez, her eyes narrowed with determination as she directed the relentless barrage. All batteries, fire at will. Alvarez's voice rang out over the bridge, her orders carrying a hard edge of urgency. We need to punch a hole in their defenses and get our ground forces through. The ship's guns thundered in response, lashing out with devastating precision as they targeted the aliens' vital installations and command centers. Explosions blossomed across the enemy's orbital fortresses, their defensive shields collapsing under the onslaught. On the ground, the Confederation's elite shock troops surged forward, their powered armor and cutting-edge weaponry carving through the alien defenders with ruthless efficiency. Seasoned veterans of the long struggle against alien oppression, these soldiers fought with a ferocity born of righteous anger, their determination to deliver justice fueling their every action. As the human forces pressed deeper into the alien heartland, the enemy's resistance began to crumble. Caught off guard by the sheer scale and intensity of the Confederation's assault, the alien troops faltered, their morale and cohesion unraveling in the face of such a relentless onslaught. General Hartman, his weathered features etched with a grim satisfaction, watched the battle unfold from the command center, his hands clasped behind his back. They never thought we'd have the courage to strike at the core of their empire, he murmured, his voice laced with a trace of bitter irony. But they underestimated the depths of our outrage. the strength of our resolve." Beside him, President Malik nodded, her expression somber but unyielding. "The alien leadership will have to answer for their crimes," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "We will not rest until justice is served, no matter the cost." As the battle raged on, the Confederation forces continued to push deeper into alien-held territory, their advance unstoppable. Entire cities fell under the weight of the human onslaught, the alien defenders crumbling in the face of the Confederation's superior tactics and firepower. In the besieged alien capital, the imperial government descended into chaos as the reality of their impending defeat sank in. The once arrogant alien leadership found themselves in a desperate fight for survival, their grandiose dreams of conquest and subjugation reduced to ashes. Amidst the turmoil, the captured images and video footage of the Confederation's assault began to filter out, painting a harrowing portrait of the human force's relentless determination. Scenes of heroic last stands by alien soldiers, of civilian populations cowering in the face of the human juggernaut, circulated through the Empire's networks, shattering the carefully cultivated veneer of invincibility. As the Confederation's forces closed in on the seat of the alien government, the once defiant leadership began to tremble, their confidence giving way to a growing sense of dread. They had committed unspeakable atrocities, driven by a belief in their own supremacy, and now they were faced with the consequences of their actions. The time for reckoning had arrived, and the alien empire found itself powerless to stop the inexorable march of human justice. The Confederation's forces surged forward with unstoppable momentum, their advance carving a path of devastation through the crumbling alien defenses. In the skies above the imperial capital, the once formidable enemy warships were reduced to burning wrecks, their desperate attempts at a counterattack thwarted by the relentless onslaught of human firepower. On the ground, the Confederation's elite shock troops fought with a ferocity that belied their discipline and training. Driven by a burning desire for justice, they swept through the streets, overwhelming the demoralized alien troops with their superior tactics and cutting-edge technology. General Hartman watched the unfolding battle with a grim satisfaction, his weathered features etched with a sense of determination. This was no longer just a military campaign. It was a crusade, a righteous reckoning that would deliver the long-overdue punishment to those responsible for the atrocities committed against the people of the Terran Confederation. "They're crumbling," Hartman murmured, his eyes fixed on the tactical displays. "The alien leadership is grasping at straws, desperately trying to hold their capital together." President Malik, standing beside the veteran general, nodded in silent agreement. "Good," she said, her voice hardening with resolve. "They will have nowhere left to hide. We will bring them to justice, no matter the cost." As the human forces closed in on the Imperial Palace, the alien leadership found itself cornered, its grand designs of conquest and domination reduced to ash. The once arrogant rulers, who had once believed themselves invincible, now cowered in the face of the Confederation's righteous fury. Desperate attempts to mount a coordinated defense were thwarted at every turn, the alien troops disheartened and demoralized by the relentless human onslaught. The Confederation's superior firepower, tactics, and technological edge proved to be an overwhelming combination, shattering the enemy's will to fight. In the heart of the imperial capital, the final battle raged, the sound of clashing weapons and exploding ordnance echoing through the once majestic streets. The Confederation's forces, led by the battle-hardened veterans, stormed the palace gates, their sights set on capturing the alien leadership. As the fighting spilled into the grand throne room, the cowering alien rulers found themselves confronted by the grim-faced human soldiers, their weapons trained on the trembling figures. Hartman, his face a mask of barely contained rage, stepped forward, his eyes burning with a lifetime of pent-up fury. "Your reign of terror is over," he growled, his voice barely above a whisper. "The people of the Terran Confederation have spoken, and they demand justice." The alien leaders, their eyes wide with fear, opened their mouths to protest, but the words died on their lips as they were swiftly subdued and placed under arrest. The Confederation's forces had succeeded in penetrating the heart of the enemy's power, and the long-sought prize was now within their grasp. As the news of the imperial capital's fall spread through the human worlds, a wave of elation and relief swept across the Confederation. The people who had endured years of oppression and suffering now looked to the future with a renewed sense of purpose, their thirst for justice tempered by a cautious optimism that the long-awaited reckoning was finally at hand. But even as the celebrations erupted, a sense of solemn gravity lingered, a recognition that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges and difficult decisions. For the Confederation, the true test was yet to come. To ensure that those responsible for the heinous crimes would be held accountable, and that the wounds of the past could begin to heal. The capture of the alien imperial leadership was a momentous turning point in the Terran Confederation's quest for justice. As the news of the decisive victory spread through the human worlds, an outpouring of emotions swept across the populace: relief, elation, and a profound sense of vindication. Yet, amidst the celebrations, a somber undercurrent prevailed. The Confederation's citizens knew that the true test lay ahead, in ensuring that those responsible for the heinous war crimes would be held accountable for their actions. It was with this weighty responsibility in mind that the Confederation Council convened a special tribunal to oversee the trial of the captured alien leadership. Presiding over the proceedings was a panel of esteemed jurists, their reputations for impartiality and integrity commanding the respect of the global audience. The trial was broadcast across the human worlds, allowing the victims of the alien occupation to bear witness and confront their oppressors. One by one, the survivors took the stand, their voices trembling with a mixture of raw emotion and unwavering determination. A young woman, her eyes brimming with tears, recounted the horrific massacre of her family in the rural farming community of Greendale. "They marched us out into the fields like animals," she said, her words punctuated by anguished sobs. "And then they just started shooting. My parents, my siblings, all of them. Gone, just like that." An elderly man, his face etched with a lifetime of suffering, described the systematic destruction of the cultural heritage in New Samarkand. "They tore down our monuments, burned our libraries, and erased the very essence of who we are, all to erase our existence, to crush the spirit of our people." The testimony continued, each harrowing account striking the chord of outrage and sorrow within the global audience. The captured alien leaders, once so arrogant and confident, now sat in the dock, their expressions a mix of defiance and growing unease as the evidence mounted against them. General Hartman, his weathered features hardened with purpose, took the stand to deliver a scathing indictment of the alien regime's crimes. "These are not the actions of a defeated enemy," he declared, his voice carrying a weighty gravity. "These are the acts of a malicious, vengeful force intent on the total annihilation of the human spirit." The general's words reverberated through the chamber, eliciting murmurs of agreement and nods of solidarity from the assembled observers. Even the alien leaders, their attempts to dismiss the charges as baseless propaganda, growing increasingly futile, found themselves cowed by the sheer force of Hartman's righteous fury. As the trial progressed, the weight of the evidence against the captured leadership became increasingly overwhelming. Witnesses continued to come forward, testifying to the scale and brutality of the atrocities committed under the alien occupation. The Confederation's case grew stronger with each passing day, leaving the defendants with little room to maneuver. Finally, after weeks of intense deliberation, the tribunal reached its verdict. The alien leaders were found guilty on all counts of crimes against humanity, their sentences ranging from life imprisonment to execution. The announcement was met with a thunderous roar of approval from the global audience, the people of the Terran Confederation at last seeing the long-awaited justice they had demanded. The cheers of triumph, however, were tempered by a solemn recognition of the immense suffering and devastation that had been inflicted upon them. As the trial concluded, the Confederation's leaders knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but they were determined to see the process through, to ensure that the scars of the past would not be forgotten, and that such atrocities would never again be allowed to occur. The streets of New Atlantis, capital of the Terran Confederation, were once again alive with the sound of celebration. But this time, the cheers and revelry were tempered by a profound sense of solemnity, a recognition that the victory had come at a great cost. As the news of the alien leadership's conviction reverberated across the human worlds, the people poured into the streets, waving banners and flags in a display of hard-won triumph. Yet beneath the surface, a somber undercurrent ran deep, a reminder of the immense suffering and devastation that had been inflicted upon them. Rear Admiral Samantha Alvarez, the hero of the decisive naval battle, stood at the center of the celebrations, her expression a mix of pride and contemplation. She had fought with unwavering determination, driven by a thirst for justice, but now she found herself grappling with the weight of the victory. "We have won the war, but at what cost?" she murmured, her gaze sweeping across the joyous crowd. "The scars of the occupation will not be easily healed, not when such horrors have been unleashed upon our people." General Hartman, standing beside her, nodded solemnly. "You're right, Samantha," he said, his weathered features etched with a lifetime of experience. "This is not a time for unrestrained celebration. We must now turn our attention to the difficult task of rebuilding, of healing the wounds that have been inflicted upon our society." President Malik, her expression solemn but resolute, stepped forward, raising her hands to quiet the crowd. "My fellow citizens of the Terran Confederation," she began, her voice carrying a weight that demanded attention. "Today, we have achieved a hard-won victory, but it is a victory tinged with sorrow and regret." The people fell silent, their expressions turning somber as they listened to their leader's words. The alien empire has been brought to justice, their leaders condemned for the heinous crimes they have committed against our people. But the scars of the occupation remain, the echoes of the suffering and devastation that our citizens have endured. Malik paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled crowd. "We must now turn our attention to the difficult task of rebuilding, of reclaiming the pieces of our shattered lives and communities. This will not be an easy journey, but I promise you, we will walk it together, with the same determination and resolve that has brought us to this moment." The people erupted in thunderous applause, their cheers mingling with the swell of emotions that filled the air. They knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, but they were buoyed by the knowledge that their sacrifices had not been in vain, that the perpetrators of the atrocities had been held accountable. As the celebrations continued, Hartman and Alvarez shared a silent moment of reflection, their eyes meeting with a mutual understanding. They had fought tirelessly, driven by a righteous fury, but now they found themselves confronted with the sobering reality of the work that lay ahead. The Confederation's forces would be tasked with not only rebuilding the physical infrastructure of the liberated worlds, but also mending the shattered psyche of its citizens. It would be a long and arduous process, one that would require patience, empathy, and a steadfast commitment to healing the wounds of the past. But as the cheers of victory gave way to the quiet determination of the future, the people of the Terran Confederation knew that they were up to the challenge. They had weathered the storm of oppression and emerged stronger for it, and they were ready to face the challenges that lay ahead, united in their resolve to forge a better, more just future for all.